Welcome to this explainer. I'm absolutely thrilled to have you here today because we're going to take something that usually causes pure panic, home water damage, and we're going to deconstruct the chaotic science behind it. You know, when a pipe bursts or a bad storm hits, it feels like total mayhem. But as you'll see today, restoring order is actually a highly precise scientific process. To really wrap our heads around this, we're using Fairfield, Alabama as our prime case study. We'll be looking at the exact local factors and the rigorous mitigation standards that professionals use to literally save a home.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here's our roadmap for today. First, the ticking water clock. Second, Fairfield's unique water risks. Third, the science of water damage. Fourth, the three-phase restoration process. And finally, we'll wrap up with timelines, costs, and prevention.
Let's kick things off with Part 1, the ticking water clock, a race against moisture.
The absolute most important thing to grasp right off the bat is that water damage isn't just a static event. It is a rapid, high-stakes race against time. 60. That's the critical number of minutes it takes for a professional restoration crew to respond to a water emergency. And why is that specific time frame so vital? Well, because water simply doesn't wait. It spreads incredibly fast, wicking right up your drywall and soaking deep into the wood framing. In an emergency, every single minute counts to stop that water from migrating into your wall cavities and causing permanent structural failure.
Then we have 48. That is the dangerously short window you have before mold spores actually begin to colonize and grow in a wet environment. If you don't start professional drying within that strict time frame, well, you aren't just dealing with water anymore. You're dealing with a severe biological hazard that completely compromises the air quality of your home.
Moving right along to Part 2, Fairfield's unique water risks. Geography meets aging infrastructure.
So how do these emergencies actually start? Well, in Fairfield, the infrastructural and environmental threats create an absolute perfect storm. I mean, you've got homes built between the 1940s and 1970s that still have their original cast iron pipes, which literally corrode from the inside out. Then add in summer humidity levels constantly sitting above 70%, which just feeds mold in poorly ventilated crawl spaces. And because of the area's valley and ridge geography, storm runoff naturally flows downhill, easily overwhelming the drainage systems in low-lying neighborhoods. It's a lot to deal with.
But the biggest culprit? It's right beneath the surface, expansive clay soil. When Fairfield's iconic red clay gets wet, it acts like an aggressive giant sponge, expanding really rapidly. And then, when it dries out, it rapidly contracts. This creates intense foundation shifts. The house literally moves, putting immense stress on rigid plumbing connections. Something as simple as the dirt under a house shifting can suddenly snap a pipe or cause an aging water heater to dump, 40 to 80 gallons of water straight into a living room without any warning whatsoever.
Now for Part 3, the science of water damage and IICRC standards.
Now, what's really interesting about this is that once water is in the house, the way we get it out completely depends on where it came from. The origin of the water entirely dictates the safety and chemical protocols used to fight it. So Category 1 is clean water from a supply line. Basically, you just extract it and dry it. But Category 2 is gray water from appliances, and this requires thorough sanitization. And Category 3, well, that's black water. We're talking sewage or stagnant floodwater older than 48 hours. That demands highly specialized contamination control, HEPA filtration, and the complete removal of porous materials just to protect human health.
And this categorization builds directly into material science. See, water isn't just classified by how dirty it is, but by how deeply it absorbs into your house. The porosity of your home's materials dictates the entire restoration approach. Class 1 is minimal absorption, but all the way down at Class 4, we see deep moisture retention in things like plaster, stone, and hardwood floors. Given Fairfield's age and construction, extracting moisture trapped deep within a 1950s hardwood floor is an incredibly complex task, requiring highly targeted specialty drying.
Which brings us to the actual physics of drying, psychrometric principles. Now, I know that sounds complicated, but it's really not just turning on a fan. It's the thermodynamic science governing how air holds moisture. Professionals carefully manipulate temperature and humidity to maintain a specific vapor pressure differential. This essentially forces the moisture out of the building materials and right into the air. They use specific equipment to create what's called laminar airflow, which is a smooth, uninterrupted flow of air across wet surfaces, rather than just blasting turbulent air around a room. Because honestly, blasting air around actually accomplishes very little drying.
All right, let's move to Part 4, the three-phase restoration process. Order out of chaos.
So we know the risks and we know the science. Now this logical three-step progression is exactly how a home is saved from absolute chaos. Step 1 is emergency extraction. Truck-mounted pumps get the standing water out immediately to stop the spread. Step 2 is structural drawing. This is where commercial low-grain refrigerant or desiccant dehumidifiers are deployed right alongside air movers. And Step 3 is verification. They use high-tech tools like thermal imaging cameras that locate hidden moisture behind walls, along with precise moisture meters to map the area. And they absolutely do not remove the equipment until the scientific data proves the house is completely dry.
You know, when homeowners try a DIY approach, like a stubborn dad just pointing a standard household box fan at a wet spot on the carpet and calling it a day, they're really only surface drying. The water is still lurking down on the subfloor and wall cavities, which inevitably leads to severe structural rot and mold. Professional structural drying, utilizing those thermal cameras and targeted vapor pressure, ensures the long-term structural integrity of the home by extracting that hidden moisture deep within the wall cavities.
And finally, Part 5, Timelines, Costs, and Prevention, Navigating the Aftermath.
So, what are the practical realities of recovery? The crucial point to understand here is the timeline. A basic leak takes 3 to 5 days of constant structural drying. But if you have Class 4 materials, like plaster or hardwood, that specialty drying extends to 5 to 14 days. You literally cannot rush this. Rushing the drying process by unplugging loud equipment early or opening a window completely throws off those psychrometric calculations we talked about earlier. Doing that simply invites a massive mold disaster just a few days later.
As for the financial aspect, restoration costs naturally depend on the water's category, the materials affected, and how fast you extracted it. Category 3 contamination costs more because of the hazardous material removal. But the reassuring news here is that sudden and accidental incidents, like a pipe snapping from that expansive clay, are typically covered by standard homeowners insurance policies. Gradual leaks from poor maintenance, however, usually face denial. This is exactly why prompt action and incredibly precise documentation by a restoration team are key to successfully navigating those insurance claims.
To wrap things up, I want to leave you with a final provocative thought. Do you know what kind of aging pipes are hidden behind your own walls right now? And do you know for a fact if your insurance policy covers a sudden catastrophic burst? Understanding the science of water damage is fascinating, but applying that knowledge to protect your own home is absolutely essential. Check those policies, monitor your home's humidity, and remember that when water strikes, every single minute counts. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and stay curious.